Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Surfing?
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is our that's our stupid theme song that I put together. Appreciate everybody joining tonight. For those of you who are listening on the podcast feed, you're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. Tonight we've got a jam-packed realignment episode for you. We've got representatives from each of the four corner schools of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State to discuss their experience through the latest round of realignment and to talk about also what they're looking forward to in the next iteration of the Big 12. Real quick housekeeping item. If you're watching or listening live, please throw us a like on the video. We're going to try our best to stay on top of listener questions, but if you super chat, that'll pin it to the question, or that'll pin your questions up to the top. We'll be sure to read those off if we get those. But as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef Andre Napier and Fireball Matt Marchesini. Guys, how does it feel to be in a stable conference for sports for the first time?
I don't know. I feel like a winner. You know, no shade at the Pac-12 or anything like that. I hate to see you guys die, but the real winners came out on top, and we're a Big 16 now. Let's go.
Damn. Yeah, that's harsh. I mean, I remember back in 2010 when I thought we were going to be chilling with Utah State and Colorado State. So it is nice. I think this conference is going to actually be incredible next year. I think there's going to be a lot of really good, good teams coming in that could absolutely challenge to win the conference in football, basketball, especially some of the schools that are represented here on the show today. So we're super excited to have you all on.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. First off, let's go around the room real quick and introduce our guests. So I kind of tried to scour the internet as much as I could with the news as quickly as it arrived on Friday. I was really just trying as hard as I could to find, okay, I need an Arizona State fan. I need a Utah fan. I need an Arizona fan. Fortunately, I'd already kind of linked up with Skill Buffs Nation about a year ago when some of this started to unravel back in July of last year. And then Wildcat Agenda, we kind of connected, about a week or 2 weeks ago. But great to have Joe and Utah Utes Ballin on here as well. But I'd love to go around the room real quick and just have you quickly introduce yourselves, what your connection is with the institution that you're representing tonight is, and if there's anything else that you do that you love, that you're involved with, that you want to plug, go for it. But we'll go ahead and start with Utah Utes Ballin.
Yeah, hey, what's up, guys? My name is Joseph. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm with the Utah Utes Football Digest. I have lived in Utah for like 8 or 9 years now, and I've just fallen in love with Utah football. I'm from Las Vegas originally, and if you guys know anything about UNLV, in my opinion, it is the worst football program. I can't even tell you guys how many times people said stuff like, hey, well, it's about to be like this new coach is going to kill it, and it's about to be a great program. Probably happened like 12 times throughout my life, and I just can't like UNLV. And so eventually I moved over to Utah, and I just fell in love with Utah. I've been covering the team. I have a Utah YouTube channel, and I've been covering the team for like 2 years, and I love talking football. I'm pretty nerdy about it. I'm guessing a lot of you guys are too. It's like I really get into the analytics, and I really get, PFF. Not 100%, but I look at it and I dive in and all that. So I'm excited to be talking football with you guys and be here with some of the other, previous Pac-12 guys and kind of share the experience, and go Utes.
Appreciate you joining, Joseph. It's great to have you here. Wildcat Agenda, a.k.a. Big Tucson Dad. What's up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. This is really fun. I'm Wildcat Agenda. That is my college football burner Twitter account's name. I usually go by Big Tucson Dad. That's my main account here. I am not from any digest or sports podcast. I am just a U of A diehard. I made a U of A based Twitter account just to alleviate all my normal followers from all the things I have to say about U of A sports. And then realignment happened, and I made a bunch of new friends in the Big 12. So I don't know. This is just super exciting. Just the whole realignment. It's kind of sad to see the pack die from our perspective, at least, or at least mine. But also at the same time, I'm still super excited to get into a conference that is much more stable. It seems like, and also has some daytime central viewing time zone games on the schedule for me. And I live in Chicago now, so I don't have to wait until 8 or 9 p.m. to watch U of A get blown out by Utah. So this is great.
I love it. And Sko Buffs Nation.
Hey guys, Scobless Nation here. Yeah, was a undergrad at Colorado during some really dark times during the program. I actually tried to transfer in as a preferred walk-on, but had a bad shoulder and never saw the field. So been a Buffs fan for a long time, for at least 15 years now, which has been a really dark time for the Buffs. We're really happy to be coming back to the Big 12 Conference where we belong. We love K-State, love that old school rivalry from the Big 12 North, and just really excited to be relevant again in the conversation. We've had 2 winning seasons since 2005, and I miss the Big 12. I think most Buffs fans also miss the Big 12. So happy to be here and happy to be working with you guys, and looking forward to this chat.
Awesome. And last but not least, we've got Joe from the Speak of the Devils podcast.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Joe Healy, one half of Speak of the Devils. We've been doing our thing since 2011. I also do a little bit of writing for devilsdigest.com, which is ASU's affiliate on Rivals. Been doing that for about, God dang, this is gonna be my 17th year. I just do some light work with them. Been around ASU athletics pretty much my whole life. My dad's a radio play-by-play voice for ASU. He's entering his 26th season doing that, so I've just been immersed in it again pretty much my whole life, and graduated from ASU a few years ago.
Love it. Love it. It's great to have all 4 of you on here. And first off, I just want to go around the room real quick and simply get your thoughts on what this past week, month, year, what it's been like for you as fans of each of the respective schools. I think, speaking from a K-State perspective, we've been through multiple rounds of realignment. We know what that uncertainty feels like and how awful of a feeling that is. And now that we have this stability, it really feels great from a Big 12 and a K-State standpoint. But from the outside perspective, I just want to know a little bit more what it's like sitting in the seat of an Arizona State fan, a Utah fan, a CU fan, and an Arizona fan, what it was like this past year or so. So, outside looking in, again, it really felt like Colorado and Arizona were ready and happy to leave and go to the Big 12, but Arizona State and Utah were more so those holdouts trying to fight for the Pac-12, coming over a little bit more begrudgingly. So just walk us through what has this round of realignment been like for you as fans, and feel free, whoever wants to chime in first, go right ahead.
Well, I'll say from the Arizona State perspective, because it was a really weird week last week, and it seemed like it took forever. After the meetings that happened early in the week, Wednesday came around, and by the close of business, folks were pretty fired up, and a lot of reports that ASU was going to jump to the Big 12. And then Thursday came, and this Board of Regents meeting, and then everyone was freaking out because it looked like it was going to ASU maybe would stick behind in this floundering carcass of a Pac-12. And then Friday came around, Oregon and Washington did their thing, and then ASU got dragged across the finish line, which obviously excited all the fans. So it's something that there's been so much going on in the last 2 years around Sun Devil athletics, with the NCAA allegations that kicked up 2 years ago, the whole Herm Edwards fiasco that came to an end last year, that I think people just have been spinning around, not really knowing, what's up or what's down. So this conference news really has been a fairly recent thing as far as being on the top of the list of, discussion topics and things that Sun Devil fans are thinking of. So again, last week was pretty chaotic. There was a lot of fear that ASU was going to go down with the ship and find itself in the position that, especially Washington State and Oregon State are in right now. But whether it was kicking and screaming or whatever the case was, and I know that even they kind of had to partner with Arizona a little bit, in an uncharacteristic move. But whatever it was, got it done. People are happy.
Yeah, brothers are brothers, even if they fight. So we're in it together for sure. From the Arizona perspective, I think for a lot of fans, the second USC and UCLA left, it was kind of, I feel like kind of most people saw a lot of writing on the wall. Um, your two flagship cash cow schools out of nowhere bolt right after voting to not go forward with any expansion to bring anybody into the conference. Kind of kind of shot us right in the foot and then ran away. It didn't look bright, and so I know a lot of U of A fans were kind of clamoring to start that discussion going with the Big 12. And credit to our president, uh, President Robbins. There, he apparently was one of the first ones to start having those conversations with other presidents at other schools. And I think that is a sentiment that was felt throughout the entire U of A community and on campus as well. So coming up to like last week here, it was I mean, we've been waiting for forever for a TV deal. It's been about almost a year now, just about. They say it's going to be coming in 3 weeks, every 3 weeks for 6 or 7 months. They just keep saying it over and over again. And so, I mean, you're slowly watching this timer tick down of who's going to be the first person to pull that linchpin. And shout out to the Buffaloes over there in Colorado, because they took that leap and they knew they needed to go back home. And then the rest of us kind of just stood there for a second, like, was that the linchpin? And Oregon Washington finished it off, and we all hightailed it out of there. So, like I said, writing is on the wall. U of A fans have been kind of eyeing this for a little bit because we know that if we get stuck in the pack, it's already tough enough for us in the pack football wise. We know we're not the premier football destination of the Pac-12, so we're getting the late slots. We're not getting the primetime games, so we're already kind of fighting for our lives as it is. But shout out to Jed Fish for turning things around. Seems like. Um, so I think just beyond saving ourselves, also noticing some grass being greener on the other side, some opportunity. It was kind of a consensus among U of A fans that we were ready to jump ship, I think.
I'll just kind of comment on how it went for Utah. So basically, we get into the Pac-12, right? 2010, 2011, something like that. You take a few rough years, but Utah didn't have any really rough years, but just some tougher years, not like super good years. And then slowly you build into becoming like a really good program. Like the past 5 full football seasons, Utah's been to the conference championship. Like it's been a really good recent history. And then we finally win a conference championship, which is not easy, as everybody in here knows. And then right after we win a conference championship, USC and UCLA leave to go to the Big Ten. And then, everything kind of starts falling apart. And we did go back-to-back conference championships. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying from our perspective, it was, and this is really how I felt. And I know a lot of people think Utah was really cocky in this whole process, but really how it went, it was kind of like, okay, for sure, it'll be, I don't know where we're going to wind up. Hopefully we stay in the Pac-12, but at the end of the day, wherever we wind up, it should be good. Like we should be a somewhat valuable program to somebody, and things should work out. But I will say at the end there, once Colorado left and everything was kind of shaky, there was a moment there where you started to worry. Like I never felt like we were going to leave the Power 5, but I did wonder. I did know there was a shot we could. So that's kind of how it went from a Utah fan's perspective.
Yeah, and for the Buffs, I think you got to trying to fight for their own lives. So we go to the Pac-12 thinking we're going to make more money, we're going to have more exposure. This is going to be great for us, right? We get there, we end up losing $75 million, and if we would have just simply stayed in the Big 12 back when we were there, we were kind of a bottom feeder team throughout our entire tenure throughout the Pac-12. You look at the Dan Hawkins years, the John Embry years, Coach Mack year. It's just one coach after the other. Never really got it done. We have one good season in 2016. We won 10 games. We go see our old pals, Oklahoma State, in the Alamo Bowl, and we get our butts handed to us, right? I think the final score was 30-0. It's been tough for us out in the Pac-12, and I think a lot of Buffs fans, there is some West Coast mentality there. We do have a lot of kids from California that come to the school, right? But I think traditionally we belong in the Big 12. I think that's where we've always been the most natural fit. We've recruited out of Texas for a long time, and so for Buffs fans, put yourself in my shoes a year ago, right? We're going into a really bad Carl Durrell season. No one was excited about the season. No one was going to the spring game. We go 1-11 last year. I think that was rock bottom for a lot of Buffs fans. And we had a lot of issues that folks aren't probably familiar with. Trying to get a transfer portal player from a year 2, year 3 standpoint from another Power 5 school, you couldn't do that with the academic requirements we had. It was the equivalent of trying to get into like a Northwestern or something like that. So it wasn't just, we hired bad head coaches, but from an overall organizational standpoint, we were thinking we're kind of dead in the water here. And where do we go forward from this, right? So fast forward to December, start hearing the rumors about Deion Sanders coming in. Now Coach Prime is our head coach. We sold out our spring game. We sold tickets for that. It's the first time in a long time that we've had a sold out spring game. And if you actually took the past 7 seasons combined, when we gave out free tickets, we sold more tickets in one game. So you see that Prime effect happening. Really excited to be coming back to the Big 12. I think a lot of traditional Buffs fans who were there during the glory days in the 80s and the 90s, they missed the rivalry with K-State. They missed going to Manhattan. They miss playing Oklahoma State, all those old school Big 12 rivals. So we're really excited. As the other folks were saying, we were kind of the first one to jump ship. I think a lot of Buffs fans just felt for the first time in a long time some actual security because of what we were promised going to the Pac-12. And we just never got the exposure. We lost out on the money. And so for us, we felt like Rick George kind of saved the program single-handedly by going back to the Big 12, getting that secure contract of $31 million a year, and also having the exposure on ESPN and Fox. It's something that Coach Prime talks about, is wanting to get our players on, primetime television and getting the exposure. And, you're getting that in the Big 12. I think the streaming deal with Apple TV was kind of dead on arrival when you look at what happened to the Pac-12 network. So for us, we were relieved saying we're not going to have to fight for what happens now. And we all knew Oregon and Washington wanted to bolt for the Big 10 as soon as they got the shot. And surprisingly, they got it sooner than I think all of us expected. And, I think Arizona, we were all looking at to be the second school, and now we're all here.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think we can definitely say, at least on the K-State side, bringing back some old memories playing in Colorado will be definitely fun for sure. But for all 4 of your schools, I mean, coming over to the Big 12, I mean, what about the move to the Big 12 excites you as a fan, excites the school? Do you think your team fits with the Big 12 from a cultural standpoint? Just kind of interested to hear your thoughts about actually, the move itself.
I'll come right back. I mean, for us, we used to be in the Big 12, right? And I think, I'll let the Utah fans speak for themselves. I mean, they have a really good following, great fan base, passionate fans. The Arizona schools have been up and down, I'd say, over the years. I think Coach Fish has it in the right spot for Arizona. ASU, we'll see what happens. But for us, as Buffs fans, like the Pac-12, this is something Adam Munster-Tiger from 24/7 Sports says a lot, but it always felt like a wine and cheese conference, right? You go to these games, you play Cal, you play Stanford, you go to some of these stadiums where they're not as passionate or filling up the stadium. And it's just a completely different atmosphere than, a sold out Boone Pickens Stadium, a sold out Manhattan, Kansas. I mean, completely different environment. You felt like the fans weren't totally into it as much as you would see in the Big 12. So I think for a lot of Buffs fans, we're pumped to be back in the truck stop conference. We're excited to go back to, Ames, Iowa, and Manhattan, Kansas, and West Texas. We're excited to get back into that. So I think overall Buffs fans are really excited to go back.
And I think for ASU fans are just looking for things to sink their teeth into. I mean, it can be a fair weather fan base to say the least, but when that weather's fair, it's something special. There are cool times around here. And to turn the page away from the Herm Edwards era, to move out of the shadows, hopefully sooner rather than later, of this whole NCAA cloud that's been around for 2 years. There's a lot of excitement. Kenny Dillingham, he's an ASU alum, brings a lot of energy. Obviously, youngest head coach in the FBS. So things are pointing in a solid direction. So to get things into a greater level of stability, and not just for football. Obviously, Bobby Hurley has had successes, especially compared to his predecessors at ASU. To even be a bubble team for ASU, that's pretty good. Willie Bloomquist in baseball, looking to get that back on track. The Big 12 will be a very interesting opportunity. I don't know if you can see the posters. I'm a huge ASU wrestling fan. Great program. Been a top 10 program the last 3 years under Zeke Jones. That's going to be a really intriguing challenge in the Big 12, and I think they're going to be up for that. So if you look at the whole landscape of things and what it does for athletics, not necessarily just football, really intriguing deal. And to enter into a conference that's got history, that's got passion, some new sites for people to go check out. I think it's just a breath of fresh air for Sun Devil fans. Now, obviously, the work needs to be done, but there's just the fan base has really been begging for something positive. And like I said, there was a lot of fear that this whole switch was going to fall through at the 11th hour. So for that to happen in a positive way, I think can be, maybe a launching pad for some fans to get excited about. Like I said, the work's got to be done, because once you get there, it really doesn't matter anymore because the games have to be played. But for now, there's some enthusiasm and some excitement and some hope. There's been a lack of hope around here for a while, and this brings that.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, similar issues down south in Tucson, and similar forms of excitement. It's very, very positive to see that we are gaining that stability. We are gaining timetables and time schedules for visibility. When ASU just beat the snot out of us 70-7, that was a dark day. That was awful. Kevin Sumlin, I've never seen a coach put a program into a hole as deep as Kevin Sumlin did. And I was a Jed Fish doubter at the very beginning. I will be the first to admit that, and he has proved me wrong. He's very much turning the ship around, and I don't think that this realignment could have come at a better time for him and his tenure at U of A. We just landed a 5-star in-state recruit on the defensive side of the ball. We just converted I believe, 4-star quarterback from Ole Miss, who is up in Chandler, to come play for us now in the 2024 class. So all the things are starting to fall in place for U of A football to not look awful in the next few years. And now we're about to get national exposure and play some games before 8 p.m. Central. And so you have that's sparking a lot of hope down south in Tucson. And then also basketball. My God, this is going to be the conference. I know ACC, people talk about ACC being the basketball conference. Not anymore. This is a gauntlet now. This is crazy. And U of A is very, very exciting just about every year, I would say. Even ASU, like I said, not like Joe said here. I'm not a huge Bobby Hurley fan, but I will say he has turned their program around for sure. It's going to be fun. March is going to be a very, very fun time for this conference. And to reiterate, absolute gauntlet. I cannot wait. It's all just so exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be in the Big 12. I know all of us are, honestly. I think the four corner school kind of share this a little more blue collar than the rest of the Pac-12. It was like someone said earlier, wine and cheese conference. It really, I would say Utah for sure. At least, I mean, I live in Utah, so I feel it. From the end of August or early September to January or whatever, Utah is all about football. And I think you guys are really going to be in for a treat with the Utah BYU rivalry. Like I said, I didn't grow up in Utah, so I wasn't aware of it. And I got here, and I love sports. I'm really big in professional sports outside of this. And I couldn't believe what the Utah BYU rivalry was like. Literally, you can see it on their faces when the game's going, that there's nothing else that matters at that moment. It is pretty intense. And I think we're excited to be here, and we're excited to be a part of this. And I think we'll fit in really well. And we kept getting told, yeah, you guys are a great football team, but how good is your brand? Like, you're doing so great at football, but how good is your brand? Well, how about we just focus on the fact that we're doing really great at football? I feel like that'll be great in this conference. So excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you. I mean, you guys all brought up good points about how you fit in, and culturally, when I look at you guys as teams, that's what I see. So when you're coming in as like a collective of Pac-12 schools, you're going to have the familiarity with each other. But when you play other teams in the Big 12, who are you most looking forward to playing? I know Utah has that rivalry with BYU, and I'm sure that's going to be the first thing that's brought up. But I just want to hear from you guys collectively, what teams are you kind of looking forward to the most playing?
So I'll throw out TCU. I mean, in recent years, ASU's had some non-conference games with BYU, with Oklahoma State. It wasn't that long ago they played Texas Tech a couple times. An 8-touchdown game by Kalen Ballage where he outplays Patrick Mahomes. Weird times. I'm actually a native Texan. I didn't live there very long, but I was born in Dallas. So love the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Love the Stockyards. So I thinking about going to a game and pregame and partying in the Stockyards and going to a football game ASU at TCU. That fires me up.
Personally, I'm excited for, of course, the KU and Arizona basketball matchups going on here. Two nationally huge brands just butting heads at least twice a year, and then possibly into the tournament afterwards. It doesn't get much better than that. And then a little bit is historic rivalries getting renewed. I would say Texas Tech for sure. Texas Tech and U of A were considered rivals back in the Border Conference way back when. And so it's been a dormant rivalry with some home and homes here and there across the years, and they've won most of them, but it's still good to have somebody to call your rival, Like, of course, ASU is going to be our number one, but it's good to have some ancillary ones as well. And BYU, we've played them our fair share as well. Good bunch of neutral sites up in Phoenix, but Phoenix is the largest population of Mormons outside of Utah, so it's actually not as neutral as you would think. So we've had some good games with them. We're currently the series record is tied with them. I believe it's 15-15-1. So we'll be looking for that next matchup to see who takes the lead.
And there was a little bit of shared history there, if I remember right, when both teams were in the WAC back in the 60s prior to joining the Pac-8 at that point in time.
Yeah, I believe Utah, BYU, ASU, and U of A were all in the WAC together. So this is just a WAC reunion, honestly. This is great.
Yeah, I think in terms of reunions, for us, it's all the Big 12 North schools, right? It's Kansas, it's Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, all the schools that we used to play in the past. I think there's going to be a lot of nostalgia there. A lot of Buffs fans have associated ourselves with UCF just because of the same color schemes. They wonder what that's going to look like. Also having Primetime, he's gotten a lot of recruits for us out of Florida. 5 transfer guys just from Florida State alone. So you're going to see kind of some, I think, recruiting rivalries that start between Coach Prime and Gus down in at UCF, and that's exciting for us. But yeah, I mean, it's the Big 12 nostalgia for us is off the charts, and I think even for younger fans, I feel like they tried to make us in Utah this rivalry, right? Utah's done really well. What Kyle Whittingham's done at the program, Utah's just nothing short of incredible. So that rivalry's never really been something I wouldn't really call it a rivalry, other than we're just state neighbors. But for us, it's the Big 12 North rival folks, especially all of you at Kansas State. I mean, we're really excited to come play y'all. When you talk to the old Buffs players like Matt McChesney, all those guys, that's what they remember is playing K-State, a hostile crowd in Manhattan. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I'd say the teams I'm most like, obviously BYU, like you mentioned, we're going to say BYU. I'm just excited. We play BYU a lot, but there's a lot of years where we don't play BYU as well. I'm excited to just have that locked in. This should be a protected rivalry and just know that that's just there every year. The other ones I'm looking forward to are just like the staples, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I feel like those schools are so similar to Utah and where they are talent-wise and kind of mentality-wise, where it's just like, yeah, we don't get the greatest recruiting classes, but we take those recruiting classes and make great teams, right? And I'm excited to see when we're playing all those teams every year, every other year, whatever, in a conference, see kind of how we come out against those guys.
Yeah, that's something that stood out to me listening to the 10-12 podcast this week, which if you're not aware of it, it's a great podcast network, and the flagship show of that network is led by Philip Slavin, who leads that whole podcast. But he had, I believe, Ralph Amsden from Arizona State on to talk about Utah and all the other four corner schools. But the thing he specifically said about Utah that resonated with me was very notorious for taking talent and developing it, as opposed to getting 4-star, 5-star guys year in and year out. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to as a K-State fan for those matchups with Utah. And as I sit here, I'm drinking a beer with a Stanford koozie on. What about the Pac-12 will you miss, if anything? And which final matchup for you in football or basketball is going to be appointment television for you in this last academic year of the Pac-12?
I think from the ASU perspective, it's obviously been a while and only happened twice. But, the ASU made 2 runs of the Rose Bowl. Won one on New Year's Day 1987 and then lost the heartbreaker that would have led to a national championship. And, I mean, for my money, one of the most memorable teams in Pac-10, Pac-12 history in 96 with ASU, Jake Plummer, Pat Tillman, Juan Roque, Keith Poole, Kyle Murphy, and all the crowd there. So there were, those memories there. Some of those kind of side – maybe not rivalries, but matchups every year with the likes of, UCLA, with USC, ASU's upset some teams, Oregon, Washington, that sort of thing. So I think for me, it would be wonderful if ASU can somehow manage a win over USC the last time they'll play them, at least in conference action. I know that's a very big ask in early September there, but if we're, wishing on some stars here, that would be one hell of a way to go out.
Yeah, I would say one thing I very much will miss about the Pac-12 is all the upsets and just the chaos. I mean, we really owned that Pac-12 after dark type of a hashtag and mantra. You'd never know. You just never ever know what's going to happen in a Pac-12 game because a good majority of our teams are just hyper offense, and then every once in a while you'll get some defense in there as well. It's always super entertaining. It's always electric, and you Big 12 fans will very much learn. But between both U of A and ASU, playing night games in the desert get very very weird, and it's always a great show. So have we always been the premier conference for getting to national championships and the big bowls on New Year's Six? Not always, but I would love to argue that we have been one of the most entertaining conferences for sure because of our parity and, like I said, electric offense. Just super fun time, fun football all around.
Yeah, I think for us, not a lot of good memories for Buffs fans in the Pac-12. Like I said, I mean, we had one winning season, the 2016 season. I think one thing I will say I'll miss about the Pac-12, besides Pac-12 After Dark, always a wild time, always fun if you were watching that. But I'm going to miss Bill Walton, the basketball announcer. I don't know where he is, if he's okay. No one seems to really check in on him anymore now that the Pac-12 is pretty dead. But, I'm going to miss Bill Walton calling basketball games. Just an absolute maniac, calling the games. You never know what that guy's going to say, right? And
I second that.
Yeah, and it just so many times he would just be talking nonsense about whether it's the mascots that the teams play for, right? Like talking about the mighty Buffalo. You're like, dude, are you watching the same game that I'm watching right now? Like, what are you talking about? But gonna miss Bill Walton a lot for sure. I think for us, Tad Boyle, our basketball coach, usually made a whipping boy out of Oregon. And we'll miss that game for sure, and their horrendous basketball court.
Well, I can tell you, I think I speak for all Utah fans when I say I want to go beat USC. Yeah, I'm not a fan of USC. I think most Pac-12 fans weren't a fan of USC. And I know there was a lot said about Utah fans, but I can tell you, having to deal with USC fans a lot over the past year or two, they're just straight up insufferable. Just ridiculous excuse makers. And so I'm excited. I can tell you guys, we're going to carry that Big 12 flag into the Coliseum and hopefully just whoop them around. And I can tell you guys, if you watched last year, it was like the electrifying offense of USC could not keep up with the physicality over a full game in Utah, and it was just awesome to watch. So, and just so you guys know, anytime you guys this coming season are playing any of the Pac-12 teams that are going anywhere else, I'll be rooting for you guys. And my games for this season, it's USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. If we can run that table, I think we go to the conference championship, and I think it's possible. It'd be tough, but possible. So excited about that.
So yeah, I mean, you run if Utah runs the table and does what they have to do, I mean, conference championships, and you go to the Rose Bowl. So with the demise of the Pac-12, so to speak, the Rose Bowl is up in the air, and Joe brought it up earlier. That's kind of the goal for a Pac-12 school outside of a national championship, is to go to the Rose Bowl. What are the feelings about not being tied to the Rose Bowl in the Pac-12 anymore? And I mean, we don't know the future of it, but what are your thoughts on that being gone for Pac-12 schools and you guys in general?
Well, as the only school who has, well, also Colorado, but you guys have a little leniency, you just got here. Sure would like to know what it feels like. That'd be cool. I would enjoy going to a Rose Bowl. I believe this is the first year where the Pac-12 championship, the winner will not be going to the Rose Bowl automatically. I believe this is the first year. Last year was the last guarantee. So now I think it might be the year that U of A might win it all, just because it's the one year we can't go to it anyways. So I think that's going to happen to us, and I'll be excited if we win all those games, but I'll just be more dead inside. I've been dead inside, but now I'll just continue a little harder. So you can talk to the other guys about what going to the Rose Bowl feels like. I have no clue.
Well, it's been a while. I've personally been twice. I went on New Year's Day '97, and both my parents are Penn State alums, so I went New Year's Day '95. Penn State played Oregon, and I mean, I have not been a big Pac-12 honk. Like, I've been the opposite. I've wanted every team to lose because I don't want them to get. It's been a real like sour, salty thing for me the last handful of years. But I think that the Rose Bowl is the most special college football game that exists. I mean, the pageantry, the history behind it, and even I truly feel like if I were a fan of someone in the Northeast of the United States or the South, someplace that had no tie-ins to the Rose Bowl, that I'd think the same. It's a really, really special game, memorable, unforgettable game. Crazy things can happen. You know, it's something really, really cool. And, you know, with all due respect, I just don't have that same feeling for a Cotton Bowl or a Sugar Bowl or those, you know, these games that carry the similar magnitude. Just the pageantry isn't quite there as it is for the Rose Bowl. So maybe somewhere along down the line, if ASU can get things going again and it's part of a playoff system that gets them there, that would be cool. But I would say there really isn't much that I'm mad about leaving behind, but just the off chance when anything can happen any given year in college football, like that 96 team, again, it was damn near 30 years ago, but that team wasn't expected to do much. They went on a magical run. Those things can happen, as we've seen. So for that possibility to be off the table again, minus a playoff run where that game's a part of it, that part kind of sucks.
Yeah, I think for Buffs fans, you know, we're similar. We've never been to the Rose Bowl, right? We came close in 2016, but we didn't do so hot in the Pac-12 championship that season. But, you know, it's the granddaddy of them all. And to what Joe was saying, I mean, it's something where you look forward to that every year. You look forward to the Rose Bowl parade, that pageantry that you see with it. It's truly something special. The only time I've been to the Rose Bowl, it was a pretty decent game. It was Texas versus USC in the national championship. Being at that game was incredible, right? And seeing the environment, the atmosphere of a jacked up USC fan base, a jacked up Texas fan base, it was truly something special, right? And those moments, those are the things that I think as college football fans, that's the kind of stuff you look back at and that's what you remember, right? And so when you can associate those types of memories with the Rose Bowl, as someone who's been to the Rose Bowl before, I mean, it's something that really once in a lifetime, you got to go, whether it's for a UCLA game in the future or college football playoff game. It's something you got to check out at some point in your life. And, for it to not be a part of the Pac-12 anymore, it's going to be weird, seeing those Big Ten Pac-12 games in the Rose Bowl every year. Utah's been there quite a bit recently, but it's something that everyone looks forward to and we're excited about, but very sad to lose that in this weird breakup that we're all in with the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I share the same sentiment about going there for a UCLA game. I don't know if I want to see a giant empty stadium. But outside of that, I do agree that the Rose Bowl is pretty awesome. It was the past 2 years that Utah went to the Rose Bowl, and it was a little disheartening to see just how damn good the Big Ten is. Like, it's the second or third best team from the Big Ten. Like, last year was the third, and they got us. I mean, Cam got injured in that game, but they felt pretty damn good. I think it would have been really tough even with Cam. So I would just say I'm not completely opposed to the idea of not facing those top three out of the Big Ten every year. That's pretty tough go there.
I think we'd be remiss to not mention the remaining 4 schools in the Pac-12 that haven't necessarily been picked up yet. We know Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, still potentially finding a home. And today we heard about some ACC rumors with Stanford and Cal. We've heard some stuff with Washington State and their old K-State president, who's their president, gave some quotes today. But what is there anything that you're hearing about those schools? Is there a specific school in that 4 that you're sad that you're not going to be playing anymore? Any thoughts on those 4 schools at all?
Well, I think ASU fans are maybe not happy to not play Oregon State anymore, but there have been some times where they have really pulled the upsets. There have been some miserable games for ASU in Corvallis in October, November, in dreary conditions. You go back, it's almost been 10 years, but 2014, after a huge win over Notre Dame, ASU's in the outside looking in the first iterations of the college football playoff polls, and then go up there and lose to a really bad Oregon State team. But I'm eager to see what happens with them. I mean, in a 12-team playoff, even if they're in the Mountain West, they could win 10-plus games a year and be a playoff contender. Really sucks for Washington State. Curious what happens with Cal. I mean, people are joking, like, is Cal just going to drop football because they're in a ton of debt? Apparently, I don't know the inside out of that, but I mean, these are things that people are saying. So it's unfortunate, but it's been such a every man, woman for him, herself at this point, where every team just has to figure out what's best for them. Every program just has to figure out what's best for themselves and make that happen. That, I mean, it's pretty cutthroat, but it's hard to have too much sympathy when you just have to focus on what's, going on at home.
Yeah, I only really feel bad for Oregon State and Wazoo because, I mean, they got really passionate fan bases. They are very, very into their schools and their programs, and that's what college football is all about. You love to see that, and to see them kind of being put off to the wayside a little bit. I don't know. It just kind of sucks. I've never had any animosity towards either school. I've always kind of had a soft spot for Oregon State specifically, just because for a very long time, I mean, they didn't have anything going for them. They just started getting good at football here, and I mean, their baseball has been bonkers just for a while now. But that's really the extent. But they still have such a faithful, loyal fan base, and they like to beat up on the Ducks, which I always think is fun. Cal and Stanford, I don't feel as bad for, just because, I don't know. Back to the wine and cheese and crackers conference, they're kind of leading the charge on that one. They're bragging about all their Nobel laureate parking spaces that they have reserved on campus, and it's like, we get it, you're smart, we don't care. Like, that's not what we're talking about right now. We know. We know. And it's like, you guys are the smartest people on planet Earth, but you couldn't read the writing on the wall, and now you're just floating up creek without a paddle here. And I don't know, they've had some attitude towards joining the Big 12 when this all kind of started going, and kind of looked down their noses. at all these other schools and these conferences, and they're pretty much saying it's Big Ten or bust for us because we're so special. And it's like, all right, you guys are just being assholes at this point. Calm down. So for Washington State and Oregon State, I do genuinely feel bad, and I really hope they find a home that takes care of them and loves them as much as the Pac-12 did before it imploded. And Stanford and Cal, I don't care what you do.
Yeah, I think for us, it's kind of when you look at just what's happening right now with realignment, right? Why is this all happening? It's TV money. We all know this. So I blame the TV networks for being in the situation. If I'm an Oregon State fan, a Wazoo fan, Cal or Stanford, right? I mean, I've seen this going around on Twitter the past few days, but people are saying, how is it that an Oregon and Washington can go to the Big Ten and get the piece of the pie that they're getting? How can the Four Corner schools all come to the Big 12 and get the chunk that they're getting, right? The 31 million guaranteed. It's a byproduct of the TV wars that we're having right now. And I think it's really perverted the sport. And I think we're going to see that kind of shake out when you have this insane travel that, thinking about USC playing Rutgers and women's volleyball and how that's going to impact student athletes going forward. It's a byproduct of the situation now. And I think it's unfair to Cal, Stanford, Wazoo, and Oregon State. And look at Oregon State. They've done well in basketball this past season. They had a great football season last year, win 10 games, beat Oregon, and a huge game, right? So at no fault of their own, their quote-unquote brand, but more importantly, the DMA that they're in and the media market that they're in, that's what's really impacting the sport right now. That's where a school like CU, who has been, a gutter football program since 2005, is attractive because we're a top 20 media market with Denver, and we kind of dominate that market, right? So when you bring in a Phoenix market that ASU can bring in and Arizona can bring in, when you bring in that Denver market, it makes us inherently valuable. But, Pullman, Washington and Corvallis, Oregon is not the market that you need if you're a TV network executive to move forward with, right? So I think it's disgusting. I think all of us can kind of agree that, conferences in the Power Five should be a regional thing. It shouldn't be something where you have these ridiculous travel schedules for student athletes, but I think we all know that's where the sport is headed right now. And, it sucks. I hate it, but I'm at least thankful to be back in the Pac-12. And I think now that these other schools from the Four Corners are there, I think we must feel pretty good about the spot that we all have to be in now with a great commissioner in Brett Yormark. And, we have to feel some security and stability now.
Yeah, excited for Brett Yormark. I definitely agree with that. So excited to be in the Big 12. The number one team, everyone said them. It's Oregon State. I don't know if I feel bad for them. I feel like I've heard a lot of people really feel bad for them, and I would say they're still going to be a good football program. Even if they wind up in a Group of Five conference, they'll still be fine. They have such good culture there. If you guys didn't watch them last year, someone mentioned the Oregon game. That was incredible. That's what got Utah into the conference championship. I was on a plane coming back from a President's Club trip for work, and all of us were Utah fans watching this game on our phones. You heard people just cheering on the plane. It was so fun. But it was wild. I think Oregon was up 3 touchdowns, and Oregon State just starts pounding the rock for I literally mentally, you thought it was over. I was all right, we're not going to the conference championship, and then an hour later we're going. So it was awesome. I'm a big fan of Oregon football, and I hope we get to play them more in the future. And I just want to comment on Stanford. They have been just shockingly bad at football recently, considering how much money they spend on it. It is surprising how bad they are. So,
for sure. So one thing, joining a new conference means that you get to educate yourselves not only on some of your new opponents that you're going to be facing each year, but you have an opportunity to educate the rest of the conference on what your team, what your community, what your school brings to the table. So what should the rest of the conference know about each of your respective institutions and then the cities and towns that they're in? And also, I think something that's also helpful to touch on is what are some of those traditions that you're most proud of or that you enjoy the most? My mind immediately goes to Ralphie with CU, but I want to go around the room here and give you a chance to kind of brag on your school, some of your traditions, and educate the rest of the Big 12 on what your school has to offer.
Well, I suppose I could start. Traditions, Not really, a ton. Obviously, a lot of reverence for Pat Tillman and his legacy here in a lot of different ways. Game day type of stuff. The administration has not been huge on tailgating, and a lot of the Tempe area that I knew when I went to school. Granted, that was 15 years or so ago when I graduated. It's night and day. It's just more of a wannabe metropolis than a college town. Certainly isn't a college town, but I mean, it's a beautiful area. Like I said before, fans pretty much across the board in all sports tend to be pretty fair weather, but when they're into it and things are rolling, it's an awesome scene. When Kansas was down here in basketball 5 years ago and ASU upset them for the second time in 2 years, that was an incredible scene. Games that we've seen against Oregon, against USC, against good Washington teams, things like that. Again, they get up for it, and that's pretty cool. The one thing that if you don't know about it now, the Territorial Cup rivalry is about as intense as it gets. I know that the BYU and Utah are going to give us a run for the money in that regard, but it's two programs that have been historically average at best in many, many, many years. The only thing that really matters, because neither team's going much anywhere, is that Territorial Cup game. It's vicious. It echoes through the fan bases as well. I'm part of that. Prior to COVID, I owned a sports bar right by Sun Devil Stadium, and we didn't let people in who were wearing U of A colors. So we had some fun with that.
Wait. Which bar was it? Hold on.
Called College Bar and Grill.
I did get kicked out of that when I was in college.
There you go.
You might have kicked me
for
out
a hot minute, but that's just a little bit of a symbol of how deep it runs. So there's a lot of pettiness, that's for sure. But as far as traditions are concerned, I think it's something that it's tough because the Phoenix area, we've said this for years, but it remains the case. A lot of people are not from here, so you don't really have those third, fourth, fifth generation fans who are going to ASU games with their grandparents, and their parents went with their grandparents and that sort of thing. You have some, but it's not an overwhelming amount. So there's just kind of like a turnstile of students and fans and things like that. But like I said, when things are rolling, it's fun. So it'd be wonderful, in years to come, that when BYU's in town, when K-State's in town, when Oklahoma State's in town, if ASU's doing well, that those are some really, really cool environments. Has the potential to be that.
Yeah, and I'll keep it in the state here up next. U of A, Tucson is a vacation spot for a reason. Lovely, lovely weather. It is. I would say the main difference between Tempe and Tucson is that we're not as paved over. When you go to like Tempe and Phoenix, you'll get very much like the big city vibe. When you get to Tucson, the nickname is the Dirty T because we don't have anything paved over, so you see a lot of desert landscape and all that jazz while you're still in the city. ASU fans love to make fun of us for it. They love calling Dirty T in a derogatory way, and then we call it the Dirty T just because we like it and it's funny. But it's good fan base down there. I was talking to some Iowa State people on Twitter the other day about tailgating and how all of the Big 12 schools seem to have just insane tailgating. U of A, if you come to a U of A game, there is some tailgating. We have a strip on our mall where people will come in and park and whatnot. It's nothing nearly as big as what you guys are used to, but there are a ton of local bars, breweries, restaurants all around campus that we implore you to go explore. If you're visiting either U of A or ASU, please go get some Mexican food. I will take shots at Tex-Mex. Tex-Mex isn't as good as just Sonoran Mexican food, I promise you. It's so good. Traditions, we love homecoming. Our homecoming is very, very big. We have a mountain, which is, I'm not saying like a mountain, I'm saying a mountain, which is also known as Tumamoc Hill. And we have a giant white A that is built into the mountain with rocks. And every homecoming at the start of homecoming week on Sunday night of the week, as the sun goes down, we light the A on fire. And so you can see the mountain just lit up in flames in the shape of an A. So that's pretty cool. That's kind of our main tradition. We really love homecoming. It is a fantastic little town. It's very easygoing. Most of the roads you're not going over 35 miles an hour. It's a sleepy little town. Takes you 20 minutes to get anywhere in the city, whether it's down the road or across town. 20 minutes doesn't matter. Good school, good people, good times. Come visit.
Yeah, Boulder, Colorado is frequently rated one of the best college towns in America. It's a destination school, so the student population, it's half in state and that's half all over the country. You get California kids, East Coast, Texas. I mean, you name it, right? Chautauqua Park, the mountains are great. Pearl Street's a great bar scene. I'd say from a tailgate perspective, we're probably not a top tier tailgate school, but we do have a tailgating atmosphere around Folsom Field. Of course, tradition. One of the best in college football, having Ralphie run out to lead the team, having a live buffalo. I make fun of schools like LSU or Texas, right? It's like you used to have Mike the Tiger at the LSU games. Bevo sits on the sidelines in Austin, but having a live buffalo run on the field, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you ever get the chance, you should definitely go check it out, go see it. And again, like I was saying, I mean, Boulder, since 2005, 2 winning seasons. Our fan base is hungry. It's there. Even the more recent students who've gone to CU, I mean, we've had bad seasons, but the appetite's there. We had a 1-11 season last year. Week 5, week 6, the student section was still showing up and showing out. So rowdy fan base. I'm sure all of you have seen what's happening with Coach Prime, what's going on in Boulder right now. It's probably the most excited I've ever seen the fan base since I've been a Buffs fan. So you're going to see a really hungry fan base this year. You're going to see a sold out Folsom Field week 2 against Nebraska, and just buckle up. I mean, it's going to be really exciting, and I think Buffs fans are really excited to come back to the Big 12 where we belong.
Yeah, so Utah has obviously, I don't know how much you guys are aware, but Utah has a huge home field winning streak. It's a super cool home environment, but the big thing that stands out, it's a more recent tradition, but I don't know how familiar you guys are. I'm guessing the Pac-12 guys all know about this, but the 22 Forever. So we had 2 players that passed away, and they were literally best friends, and it was 6 months apart or something. It was really a sad moment, especially when the second guy passed away. The first guy was a superstar. I don't know if you guys remember Ty Jordan. He was a big time baller running back. He looked like he was poised to be the next great Utah running back after that COVID season. And then he passed away when he was home on winter break or whatever. And then his best friend passed away as well after one of the games early in the 2021 season. And what Utah does is at the end of the third quarter, so right before the fourth quarter starts, they do a thing called a moment of loudness. You guys might be familiar, I'm not sure, but basically what happens is they play the video of those 2 guys, and it's pretty damn sad, dude. And their parents are really involved in the program, so show their parents. It's really sad. I mean, if you guys have kids, you guys know what it's like. That's your worst nightmare. And then the whole stadium after they play the video just goes nuts, as loud as anywhere I can remember being. So super cool moment. If you guys get to be there for that, that's probably my favorite tradition. It's a more recent one, but it's really cool.
And kind of wrapping it up here, with the last season of the Pac-12, a lot of people outside, I would say the Pac-12 circle, so to speak, know that the conference in football is it's going to be very strong this year. Thinking there's multiple teams that maybe can win the conference championship and potentially go to the college football playoff. But specific to your schools, how do you think your school's going to fare in the last season of Pac-12 play, and any bold predictions for football or basketball for this last year?
Well, for ASU coming off a 3-win season, just a nightmare last year. I mean, getting up to 500 is a realistic goal. It's attainable. I mean, some things are going to have to go their direction. Got 8 home games, which is a huge benefit, including some challenging teams. Territorial Cup game is back up in Tempe after a real wild one last year that didn't go ASU's way. So I think that's something that year one under Kenny Dillingham to double the win total from last year, even if it's just a 500 year, that would be a step in the right direction. Basketball wise, obviously ASU made it into the tournament, had a heartbreaker against TCU, and prediction of the Big 12 that they'll be facing. A lot of turnover there with transfers coming out, some guys in, so that one's really hard to tell, but kind of sticking on that normal train of being a bubble team. Again, I hate to say that mediocrity is great, but just I've been paying attention to ASU sports for about 30 years, and I remember some really, really dry times in basketball. I remember just getting our tails kicked year after year after year by Arizona. So, to be winning a few here and there against them, even in miraculous fashion like last year down in Tucson, those are good things. So, yeah, I would say just to kind of keep that trend going, getting up to 500 is a realistic goal. Again, maybe on the high end a little bit. It's going to take some luck. And then for basketball, just to keep heading in a positive direction, just to get in. I think just getting into the Big 12 with some momentum and getting this year, and especially the last couple of years behind ASU, is going to be a huge deal, because the future can be bright, but got to take the steps to get there.
Yeah, for U of A here, football wise, we've been Jed Fish has been digging himself out of the hole that Kevin Sumlin put him in. Unfortunately, his first season went 1-11, so that sucks. It doesn't get too much worse than that. It does get a little bit worse, but not much. And so, kind of the way Jed has been running the program is little by little, we're going to get better all the time, every year. Just keep improving. We've retained a lot of our really good playmakers, both from graduation and the portal. We lost one of our top receivers to USC, which is a nightmare in its own right. But I see U of A's ceiling being 8-4 this year, their floor being 4-8. I'm hoping we at least go 6-6. Improve by one game over what we were last year, where we had 5 wins. Let's go get that 6th and get back to bowling, and hopefully go win a bowl. That'd be great. And then basketball wise, let's go win a national championship.
Yeah, I think for Colorado, we're probably the most across the board, pick your own adventure for what's going to happen this season, right? There's some folks, the bookmakers make it 3.5 roughly for how many wins the Buffs will have. You see a lot of people on Twitter saying, I'll take the under. They're not going to win any games. You got to think about, we only have 10 scholarship players who were on the team last season, or 10 overall players on this new Buffs team. So I think a lot of folks are looking at, if it's a 4 or 5 win season in football, those are huge steps from a 1-win team that we had last year. And I think a lot of folks will try to unfairly compare us to Texas A&M because there's a lot of hype around the program, a lot of noise with Coach Prime and everything that he's done so far up in Boulder. But I think for me, I've always said the sweet spot, I think, is 6 wins. I think it's realistic for the Buffs to actually get to 6 this season. The first 5 games are going to be tough, right? We got TCU right out of the gate down in Fort Worth. We got Nebraska at home. We have our little brother, Colorado State. But then we kick off Pac-12 play with USC and Oregon back to back. And I swear they've done this to us every year in the conference, but they just make it as impossible as it can be for the Buffs to start the season every year. And then they go, and then their last game's against Utah to kick off, to finish out the season. So I would say 6 wins is realistic, and we get to a bowl game this year. I think if we get to 4 or 5, that's huge for the Buffs program. And then for basketball, Tad Boyle's done a hell of a job as the basketball coach at CU. I think for the Buffs this year, we have Cody Williams coming in. Depending on which recruiting website you look at, they have him, in the top 5 overall. So there's sky high expectations for basketball this year. And I'm really excited to see the Big 12 basketball product when you bring in that Arizona, when you bring in a Colorado with Tad Boyle and all these other programs. So, high expectations in Boulder, highest they've ever been with Coach Prime there. But, I think if they get to a bowl game this year, then gloves are off coming into the Big 12 next year.
Yeah, I think for Utah, the goal is obviously a conference championship. We've won 2 in a row. So obviously, and I really think, and I really believe this with the schedule we have this year, if we do win a conference championship, we're going to the college football playoff. Like, if you look at our schedule, trust me, I think this is by far the toughest year for us to win a conference championship. Like, we play at USC, at Washington, there was one other big one, and at Oregon State. I just like those 3 home fields are going to be rough, and I think we got a shot. One thing I want to comment on is I'm sure you guys all know who Dalton Kincaid is. I'm sure you guys have all heard his name. He was awesome last year. But a lot of people that were not watching Utah, and I knew about Dalton Kincaid for years. I knew he was awesome. People that weren't following Utah at the beginning of the year might not know who Brent Keithy is. Before Brent Keithy got injured, Dalton Kincaid was playing second fiddle to Brent Keithy, and Brent Keithy looked like the best tight end in the country. So I'll just say anyone that thinks Dalton Kincaid is going to be a huge hit is right, but we have basically the best replacement you could possibly have for that huge hit. So go Utes. So we get one more.
Chef, you want to round it out with that last question there?
Well, I kind of just want everybody to, Bob's going to ask you guys to plug all your stuff before we get out of here. But I had one for Joe specifically. Bob had informed me that you were somehow plugged in with the NIL aspect at ASU, and I kind of wanted to know what you're doing with that, and kind of the in and outs of what it's like to do the NIL and all that goes with it, because I'm just so lost with the world we're in now, and I'm really curious.
Yeah, so I'm a board member of a group called Activate ASU. There are, a few different groups that work with NIL around Arizona State, like there probably are at many other schools. We just came into existence at the beginning of this calendar year, and the initial mission, the initial goal was more to connect fans and businesses. It's kind of a spinoff on Kenny Dillingham's introductory press conference and early media that he did. He kept talking about activating the Valley, so we kind of used that terminology. As things developed, we got into the NIL landscape of things. Up to this point, it is mainly, if not exclusively, been with connecting student athletes and businesses, not so much on the, hey, you want to donate X amount of money and get that put to use. That could be forthcoming, and that is the plans. It's been more along the lines of making those partnerships with local businesses, which has been awesome. Like I said, I've been immersed in Sun Devil athletics and its community for a very long time. So it's just kind of a matter of, communicating, connecting with people that I already know, and using a passion to drive that. So it has been wild. It's interesting that, there are a lot of student athletes that just kind of like to have some deals. It may not necessarily be about, getting $10,000, $20,000, $1 million a year. Obviously cash is good and they want that, but there's value in just being appreciated, having that. I mean, we're talking about 18 to 22, 23-year-old kids. So they like going on Instagram and saying, hey, I've got this deal with this restaurant, even if they're not getting a ton out of it in those circumstances. So it has been truly something interesting. And I know a lot of people share opinions as far as it having its value. It's obviously good for student athletes to get what they're worth, but regulations, things like that need to happen. I mean, that's a conversation for an entirely different time. But yeah, it has been quite interesting. I haven't been in the depths of it. I'm a board member and I help with some things. There are others that are really the boots on the ground on an everyday basis. But it's a cool thing being able to create these connections and help with those conversations. But man, as you talk to more people about it, it's wild how the whole thing is just chaos across the country, especially, hearing things from the SEC and ACC and how that goes on. Man, that's some wild stuff. But until people stop them, I guess they're not going to stop themselves.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really refreshing to hear. That's kind of the roots of NIL, name, image, and likeness. You're putting your name out there, letting businesses use your likeness to sponsor them, and it works both ways. It's not the pay for play, and I'm glad that you're involved with something actually kind of honorable instead of that shady backroom door shit. So that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I want to give everybody else an opportunity to quickly plug whatever you want to plug. Wildcat Agenda. I think you've got a minor league baseball podcast, so we'll go around the room, plug whatever you want to plug before we sign off here, and then we'll give a final word.
I do, yeah. I don't have any college football podcasts or anything like that, but I do have a podcast, and it is called Minor Breakdown. And it is about exploring minor league, independent, and summer league baseball teams and exposing listeners to the world of baseball outside of just the MLB and giving exposure to these local teams because everybody should go support their local baseball team. It's the best. Tickets will cost like $10 and they have insane drink deals and the pitchers aren't that great yet. So you're going to see a lot of home runs. It's a fantastic time. Everyone should get into minor league baseball if you have anyone close to you. But yeah, go check out my podcast, Minor Breakdown, to go learn about some of these teams. We are building the map out across the country, so we have teams that we've covered in every region, just about, all the way up in Anchorage, Alaska.
For me, Speak of the Devil's podcast on every major podcast platform, SOTD podcast on Twitter, Speak of the Devils on Instagram. In the coming weeks, we're actually going to start having a weekly TV hour on the Arizona Family Network. It's Channel 3, Channel 5 out here. So pretty fired up about that. I also do some work for devilsdigest.com, of course, with the Rivals Network, as I mentioned earlier. And that's a great source if you're looking to get, real in-depth knowledge of what's going on or just kind of keep tabs on ASU. Both those, I think, are great sources to stay up to date with things.
Yeah, just go ahead and follow me at Scope Ups Nation on Twitter. I got some bigger stuff in the works, working with a lot of Buffs fans ahead of a big season for us. So a lot more to come on that front. So stay tuned, but go ahead and follow me on Twitter. And, looking forward to speaking with you guys in the future. This is really great. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys can follow me at Utah Utes Balling. I'm mainly on Twitter with that. I have an Instagram too and a TikTok, but I don't use them as much. And then I have a YouTube channel, Utah Utes Football Digest, and I do really detailed breakdowns, especially with us about to go into the Big 12. If you guys are into that, I break down all the star players on each team. We break down PFF grades, really analytical, really fun. So if you guys are into that, make sure you follow the page, and I'll look forward to playing your team.
And we will look forward to that as well. Guys, thank you so much for joining tonight. Appreciate each of you coming on and sharing a little bit more about each of your respective institutions. I'm ecstatic about each of these new additions to the Big 12. I think this conference, if it's not going to be making $60 to $100 million a year, it's at least going to be fun as hell, super competitive, and there's going to be a lot of parity, I think, from top to bottom. So best of luck to each of your respective schools this football season and basketball season as well. And we will talk to you hopefully next football season and get you on for some previews in action once we have the schedules and stuff released. But appreciate everyone joining, and we'll talk to you hopefully next season.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye to y'all.
Thanks, brothers.
All right. Debrief time real quick before we go into the next podcast.
We're still recording, right?
Yeah, we're still recording. We're still live. There are 9 people watching right now.
Dude, that was sick. I thought that was real informative. Those teams, you could tell that they're ready for the Big 12, and it's going to they each add aspects to the Big 12 that's substantial. So you got U of A with basketball. Colorado's on their rise with Prime and his whole, aura that he's going to bring to the Big 12. Utah's obviously a dominant football program as of right now. And ASU, they say they're a sleeping giant. He even calls them fair weather fans. So, if they have any semblance of positivity around that program, it could be trouble. They could bring a lot of noise.
Yeah, all 4 schools bring a different element, especially into 2024. And Utah is definitely one of those schools that, you can just see being at the top half of the conference when they come in already. With the other three schools, depending on how things go, they could be competing very early on. So it's going to be very interesting, especially on the football side, not even getting into the basketball side, where you bring in Arizona, who's a perennial national championship contender. And Colorado has been very, very good in recent years in basketball. So, just being able to talk about, what those four schools will bring, it's always exciting, I think, for all of us at K-State, but in the Big 12, we're going to have a lot to learn when these four schools come in.
I did not realize Arizona State was a powerhouse in wrestling. They're going to fit in perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
How much the Big 12 values wrestling, and with
my
how
God.
big Iowa State, Oklahoma State, those are some of the best wrestling programs of all time. And I also liked what he had to say about Arizona State baseball. Like, when I think back to some of the College World Series, I used to go to the College World Series every single year with my dad. And I think back to plenty of them had Arizona State in it. They were a perennial contender. They were perennial invitee, kind of like a LSU or Texas. They're constantly in the College World Series. So I think they add a lot. And I think Arizona was on the bubble as well, and they ended up getting the invite over K-State this year in baseball. So there's some good across the board. There's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of parity, like I already mentioned. I'm just excited because also geographically, I live 40 minutes from Boulder. My dad lives in Scottsdale, so that's a quick flight for us to get down to Tempe for a game, and then to Tucson for a game. So I'm really excited. And, Salt Lake, I've been there as well. It's a fun time. It's an interesting place to go to. It's hard to find bars sometimes, but Salt Lake has more than Provo. I will at least say that. Any other final words before we sign off here?
I was going to say and just aesthetically looking, I mean, they look, obviously they're Power 5 programs. So like the last run of, teams we added to the Big 12, they were group of 5 teams. And, they kind of, just from image looks, they look like teams that are not Power 5 programs yet. But you add these guys straight from the Pac-12, they look the part. They look like Power 5 programs. It's going to be, it helps the brand of the Big 12 all in all. So, yeah, I'm pumped. I think they're going to have a lot to learn, all right?
Yeah.
Damn it. We're going to have a lot to learn. They're going to have a lot to learn.
Bring it on.
Yeah, I wanted to keep this relatively short, about an hour or so. But I did have a question of like, what questions do you have for us about other Big 12 schools? Maybe we save that for another time. But
well, we're going to have them on too, like throughout next season. They're individually, so they're gonna learn then, and maybe we'll be guests on their shows.
They won't learn.
Oh.
Awesome. Well, I just want to take a quick second. Thanks to everybody who watched this live. This is the first time we've done a YouTube live stream. We got our start doing live podcasting in an audio only format, but it's kind of fun to do the video thing for the first time. But give this video a like if you're watching this after the fact or during the fact. We love that. That'll help out the channel and help out, just promoting this moving forward. But we're going to go ahead and sign off. Appreciate everybody joining, and we will talk to you next week or later this week, whenever I decide to publish the next episode. Deuces.
Peace.